you a true crime junkie? Do you talk about true crime with your friends all of the time? And are there cases that have stuck with you for so many years because of geographic or emotional closeness? If so, then welcome to Fatalities. I'm Elisa Lucas, and this is the podcast where I explore true crime cases over tea with the help of my friends. Because without tea, friends, and good conversation, there's nothing but darkness and chaos. So grab a warm cup of tea and join me as my friends and I discuss the cases that have struck a chord with us and the related issues that might help us understand why such horrible crimes have occurred. The podcast is dropped every other Wednesday and is available on such podcatchers as Apple, Podbean, Spotify, and so much more. You may follow Fatalities on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but don't forget that Teas is spelled T-E-A-S, because here is where we spill the tea.
Warning! This circulated content that is not suitable for kids like me.
Welcome to Crime Crazy, the weekly true crime podcast with Diana Seacon
and David Hatt,
where we prove
that we know nothing about our legal system,
but we're still crazy for a good true crime story.
Hi, Di.
Hey, not Eryn. Who the hell are you?
I don't know. Sometimes I just have to sit there and wander that.
Are you having an existential crisis in my craft room during my podcast?
Yes.
Awesome.
There's no better way to do it.
Great. Hey, Crime Crazed. We have a special guest host this week. Eryn was traveling, so she maybe unwisely left it to me to do the podcast for this week. So I have special guest and birthday boy and Patreon supporter, maybe most importantly, Dave Hatt.
Yes. And I take it as a personal affront that Aaron's not here right now.
He thinks that you're creeped out by him.
Which is entirely possible.
Totally possible.
Creep a lot of people out.
So Dave, how did you end up on this podcast?
Well, I've been Diana's friend for longer than I thought I'd be alive. And I don't know, I was a fan because I hadn't heard my friend's voice in a long time, and it was nice just to be able to hear her every week.
Aw, that's so sweet. All right. Well, we've got a good story. And in fact, it is a story that you suggested. We'll talk about how we got there in a minute. But first, I have to tell you that Crime Crazy is sponsored by you and Seb Bryce. Thanks, guys. Show sponsors support Crime Crazy through Patreon at the $10 per month level or above. Thank you. We appreciate it. A special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Next week will be the week that we're giving our monthly shout outs. So if you would like a shout out for being a Patreon supporter, you've got, honestly, only about 4 days because we're doing this at the last minute. So do what you can. If you'd like to support us, you can go to patreon.com/crimecrazypod or just search for Crime Crazy. And we'll give you a shout out on the show and all sorts of other cool things. If you would like to receive a shout out otherwise, please rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Dave.
Yes.
Guess what?
Chicken butt?
Yes, and...
In your hand?
Ew. We got 2 new reviews this week.
No.
Totally.
Impossible.
No, you were there when I discovered it. So thank you very much to Lizzie43645 and Crimecast Fan. You left wonderful 5-star reviews, and we love them and appreciate them. You can follow Crime Crazy on all the social medias at Crime Crazy Pod or visit our website at crimecrazypodcast.com.
So how come Lizzie4543 and Lizzie4546 and up haven't left reviews?
I don't know. Maybe we need to hunt them down and make some pretty specific threats.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll give you something to do for the next 4,353 minutes.
How long is that? I just learned. I thought I was going to learn something there, and then I didn't. So, Dave, did you learn anything this week?
I did, but I forgot it. So I brought something that I figured you knew, because you're an expert at these sorts of things. When I was in Australia, I learned that kangaroos have a bifurcated penis, and bifurcation means it's split like a Y. So when they take a whiz, there's two streams.
Right, but then when they're having sexy kangaroo times, are there two receiving holes?
I don't think so. I think it's just double the pleasure, double the fun.
I feel like that would be weird. But I'm not a kangaroo.
Or maybe it's like an anti-aircraft gun where one fires and the other one wrecks back.
Well, if anyone knows the answer to that, you should let us know.
Yes, it was quite the sight to behold. I'd heard about it, and then when we went to the Sydney Zoo, I was lucky enough to be there while a kangaroo was urinating.
Oh.
Indeed, it was true.
We had kangaroos at the zoo here. It might have been last summer. It might have been the summer before. I don't fucking remember. I was not aware of that fact, nor did I see a kangaroo pee.
Yeah. And it's very possible, and don't quote me on it, but I think a lot of marsupials are bifurcated.
Huh.
So your pandas,
Pandas aren't marsupials.
I thought they were.
You're thinking koalas. I'm not 100% sure they're marsupials either.
Are you sure? I thought they were marsupials too.
I just went to the National Zoo, and I'm pretty sure they would have mentioned if pandas were marsupials.
Well, what are they then? They're not
They're bears.
No.
They are. There was a big sign that says pandas are bears.
Now you're going to tell me Pluto's not a planet.
It's big enough for your mom.
That's what your dad told me.
That must be on the back of that t-shirt.
That's going to get cut.
Oh, no way. All right. That's fascinating. I wonder what the evolutionary advantage is.
Double your pleasure, double the fun.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
Yeah. I mean, 2 is always better than 1. That's
Is
what they
it?
say. That's the American way. Bigger, better.
Has that worked out for us?
I don't know.
I don't
I don't want to talk about politics, Di.
Yeah, white men hate it when I do that.
No, I agree with your politics. It's just...
No. We've gotten reviews. They hate it when I do that.
Well, if we talk politics, they're really going to hate it. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who's more liberal, you or me.
Yeah, I don't know either. All right.
Anyway,
So ask me.
Di, did you learn anything today?
I did. But I don't remember how I learned it. I went down like a internet K-hole the other night, and this is one of the things I learned.
A K-hole?
Well, it wasn't a real K-hole. It was just
I've never heard that phrase before. I'm learning something as we're doing the podcast.
You've never heard that? Apparently, when you do ketamine, you can go down a K-hole and you just lose some days.
I don't know what ketamine is.
It's a horse tranquilizer.
Okay, cool.
Now I feel weird about knowing this.
All I remember was what's the angel dust? Is that
PCP?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a horse tranquilizer.
is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I know it's horrifying. It sounds terrible.
Anyway, sorry.
All right. So anyway, I went down many internet rabbit holes the other night, and one of the things that I found was that the person who has served the longest time in prison in the United States was a man named Paul Geidel Jr.
I remember him from high school.
Well, then you are even older than I am, because he was 17 in 1911 when he robbed and murdered a 73-year-old guy, William H. Jackson. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. So he started out at Sing Sing, and he was nearing a possible parole hearing, but doctors suddenly decided that he was legally insane in 1926 after he'd been in prison for 15 years, and they moved him to the Dannemora State Hospital for the Criminal Insane, which grammatically made me a little uneasy. And he was there until 1972, when he was transferred to Fishkill Correctional Facility. He was granted parole in
Fishkill?
Fishkill, yeah. Fishkill. Fishkill. Maybe that's what I have to learn for next week.
Continue.
He was granted parole in 1974, but he was 80 years old. And he had spent 63 years, his entire adult life in prison, and he didn't want to go because he didn't know what else to do. So he asked to stay, and they granted that, and he stayed for another 6 years. He finally left prison on May 7th of 1980, having served the longest prison sentence in the U.S. Again, he was convicted in 1911 and given a 20-year sentence. He should have been out in 31.
Well, yeah, you said what?
He was let out in 1980. He should have been let out in 31.
But it was like a two years before he was going to be let out that they decided he was insane, right?
Like 5-ish. Okay. But it was right before he was up for his first parole hearing.
I think if I was him, I would have called B to the S on that.
I mean, but it was like the 20s.
There was bullshit in the 20s.
Well, but it was all bullshit in the 20s. It was hard to tell the difference. We didn't know things yet.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't alive back then.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Die?
Nope.
So I can't play the part of, Eryn being the younger of the two of us now.
No, because it's definitely you.
Yep.
So he was, 86 or so when he was released. He died almost exactly 7 years after he was let out on May 1st, 1987 at the age of 93. And after he was released from prison, he spent the remainder of his years in a nursing home. And his record for incarceration has not yet been broken. So not only the longest, but the, deeply shittiest way to go about it.
Did you say what the crime he committed was?
Murder.
Oh. I was going to say...
Second degree.
Was it even something that is worth your entire life?
But it wasn't supposed to be that's what gets me. It wasn't supposed to be his entire life. And even if they declared him criminally insane, which they must have, there wasn't a ton of information about this. Even if they just looked at the prison time, he'd served about 15 years. And then when they let him out of the hospital, I guess it was only an additional 2. So there's not counting the hospital. And was he suddenly not insane? So many questions.
Right. And why wasn't he released when... Because wasn't it in the late 70s that they pretty much kind of evacuated all those...
Oh, a lot of the...
institutions, where you just don't...
Well, he was back in prison by then.
Oh, okay.
And he asked to stay. He wanted to stay in prison because he just didn't know what to do otherwise.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm acting like I didn't even listen to your story, which may be true. I'm a white man.
It's true. I do have a vagina, so...
I may have glossed off in the middle of it and just kind of catch the end.
Yep, there we go. That fact kind of bummed me out. I'm sorry. Now I've bummed all of you out, too.
I don't like the kangaroo penis idea better.
I should have,
Should have led with the kangaroo penis.
We did lead with the kangaroo penis.
Well, shit.
Not inebriated, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, you're in for a treat.
All right. So, sometime last year, you had sent me some information about a story. And I decided at that point that I wanted to wait until you were in town so you could be on the show so you could talk about it. And then we bought Bob Mold tickets. So I knew you were going to come into town around your birthday. Mm-hmm. And I thought, all right, so I had it in my head. We were going to do this story when you came into town after we saw Bob Mold, which was last night, by the way, and it was fucking amazing. But I digress. But then in between the time that we decided on it and you told me about the story, Eryn and I decided to do this string thing where all of our stories tie together. So in the back of my head, this whole time I've been I gots to get to this one. How do I do this? And motherfuckers did it.
Good on you then.
Oh, I'm super excited about it.
Well done you.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself. So last week on Crime Crazy, I told the very shortened version of the Patty Hearst kidnapping.
I don't think Patty Hearst had anything to do with Aberdeen, South Dakota.
She didn't. But the reason that I went because I went from rich girls doing bad stuff, and so that got into Patty Hearst, and the reason I chose Patty Hearst as my rich girl doing bad things, besides the fact that I didn't really know anything about that case, was because it's a kidnapping, which got me to a kidnapping. Also a little murder.
This is kind of like 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
A little bit. So we're talking about this one because it happened in your hometown.
It did.
When you were a kid.
Yes.
Kid kid, teenager?
86 would have been 14.
Okay, so teenager. And you remember, like, all this going down.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal. Aberdeen's maybe 14 to 20,000 people.
And it's the third largest city in South Dakota?
It is.
Wait, so Pierre is less than that?
Pierre is less than that.
Holy shit.
Capital cities aren't usually the biggest. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, hi, St. Paul, I have. But I guess I didn't realize... Actually, another thing that I learned today was that Aberdeen is the third largest city in South Dakota. I didn't realize it was that small.
Yeah. It's probably soon to be eclipsed by Watertown,
Ooh.
who was wise to allow Interstate 29 to run through it. Whereas Aberdeen's like, yeah, I don't think so.
Good job, Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Dying town.
I've heard that they are the meth capital of South Dakota and used to be, was the hub city because of all the train connections that you could get out. There's Minneapolis and St.
Paul?
Louis. No, it's Minneapolis and St. Louis Railroad,
Yep.
I think. The Great Northern went through there.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee, Chicago, and Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
Many. Lots of railroad tracks.
I remember when we first met and you were telling me about Aberdeen, one of the first things that you told me is that it was full of owls.
Oh, yes. The Native Americans did not like and never settled around Aberdeen because there were a lot of owls. Owls are the harbinger of death. And also, it's built on a swamp. So,
Bad job, Aberdeen.
yeah. It's like
not really built to thrive there, were they?
No, and the many floodings and everything. It was like, I don't think this is right. But anyway,
Yeah.
apparently you can build railroad tracks on a swamp and it's fine. Maybe the noises
Oh, yeah. You want a little bit
are
of
softened
bounce
by
after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see where that might work.
Yeah.
I could also see where it might be a horrible disaster. I'm not a railroad engineer.
No, it's had its little places in time during World War II, when the trains were going through and all that good stuff.
Yep.
With the troops on it. They set up what they called the pheasant canteen.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the troops would get pheasant sandwiches, which was like a big treat.
Oh, yeah.
Because they would organize hunting parties and go out and hunt pheasant. And then the ladies of the town, well, not those ladies of the town, the other ladies of the town would make pheasant sandwiches.
Huh.
And serve them to all the troops that go into war and coming back.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Pheasant is delicious.
I wouldn't know.
I've only had it in chili, but it was really good. It was really good in chili.
So,
All right.
I don't like to eat things I've put my hands in. So
I try not to put my hands in things I might want to eat.
sorry, I've derailed that story long
That's why I have a grocery store, not a barn. Dave when he originally told me about this story, he sent me the links to the court documents, which is lucky because when I was going back and looking at it this week, I can't find any contemporary coverage about this story because it was in 1986 and apparently Aberdeen has not gotten around to digitizing their newspaper.
What is digitizing?
It's where you put things on the interdoodles.
Oh.
Yes. But it's very hard. And I did not feel like driving to Aberdeen to go through microfiche.
I can't imagine why.
I mean, it's a really long drive, and I was pressed for time.
Right. It's a beautiful city. I should really say that.
I have been to Aberdeen.
I don't want them to be mad at me.
Oh, okay. It was lovely, and we had a really nice time.
I'm one of their native sons.
I don't know that I made a great impression while I was there.
Sorry, I'm interrupting too much.
That's okay. The only thing I could find about this case was from aberdeennews.com, and it was actually just a reference in an article that mostly regurgitated the court documents that you sent me, but also talked about how this particular murder in 1986 was the first in Brown County, where Aberdeen is located, since I think it was 1907, and then there wasn't another murder until 2015. And now that I know that there are so few people, that makes a lot more sense. I just thought there were way more people in Aberdeen.
It's statistics.
Math is hard.
Well, it's a bell curve. Everything's a bell curve. That's all I learned.
True story. So here's what we know. All of the information that I have here is from court documents, which leads a lot to be desired from a narrative standpoint. I'm going to be asking you for some color commentary here.
I will try.
Excellent.
I will endeavor to persevere.
Ooh. So on the morning of May 8th, 1985, Michael Kinney left the home that he shared with his mother to attend classes at Northern State College, which you also briefly attended?
I did 2 years.
Ooh.
Except it was Northern State University. They upgraded.
Ooh, excellent. In Aberdeen, South Dakota. And he was never seen alive again. The next morning, Michael's mother, Sandra McNeil, found her son's car on the side of the road near their home, locked, but Michael was nowhere to be found. She thought that was weird, so she called the sheriff. The next morning, which was May 10th, Mrs. McNeil got a call from an unidentified man telling her that if she wanted to know what happened to her son, she should go to a phone booth at an Aberdeen bar and retrieve an envelope left under the phone. She did that, and she found a ransom note demanding $200,000, which is about $470,957 today, in exchange for her son.
It's a lot of Ataris.
So many Ataris.
This is what, 1986? We're looking at
2600?
No.
Before? No.
After. Maybe no Ataris. We're talking about NESs by now.
No. That early?
Way.
Huh. Yeah. Check that out.
Sorry. Had to interject a little retro gaming into the...
Of course. Police were able to round up $190,000 from local banks. I don't know if the other $10,000 just didn't happen or if she had it. Like, the other $10,000 is just missing.
Maybe he's like, if you deliver it by a certain date, you get a 10%
cash discount. That's only a 5% discount. It's not even a very good one.
Yeah, math is hard.
Math is hard.
And I'm from Aberdeen, so.
They rounded up $190,000. They took the money to the McNeil residence to wait for further instructions, and those didn't come for 3 days, which, as a parent, must have been the worst 3 days ever.
I could imagine.
The longest, worst 3 days ever.
Well, and the funny thing about this thing is it played out over time. Like,
yeah.
First you heard in the news that, the guy disappeared. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, she had a call, and then what comes next? You just got little snippets of it every few days. So it was like this big, long drama.
Yeah.
Back in the olden days before, the internet, when you knew everything right away.
Right.
It came really slow.
Did Aberdeen ever have like a morning and an afternoon paper?
No, the American news came out in the morning.
Okay. So you would have had to wait the whole next day.
Right. But you always had, KBY, the local television station, to follow up.
Yeah. But still, you had to wait hours to see what was going on.
Right.
And there was delay.
Yeah. But the cool thing about the past is that there was other things to do besides sitting there wondering what happened to a local celebrity or anything like that. We had our imaginations and stuff. So.
Oh my God, you sound like a grandpa.
And I can't even use the both ways up the hill because Aberdeen is
so flat.
Completely. It's in the region of the United States designated as treeless. And
yeah.
They planted the trees that are there.
Did you know that they did a study, it was a few years ago, I don't remember how long ago, that proved that Kansas is actually flatter than a pancake? Because pancakes have like the divots, the kind of pores, and Kansas does not. See, now this...
Okay, so like, were they looking at a pancake under an electron microscope and then comparing it to like...
No, what they looked at is if you took a pancake and made it the size of Kansas. Of Kansas. I don't know why I keep saying canvas.
Canvas is more interesting?
Probably.
It's a blank slate from which the imagination can grow.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thanks. I just came up with
that. All right. So 3 days later, after the discounted amount was rounded up.
You asked for this.
I know. There was a second phone call. And in this phone call, Mrs. McNeil was instructed to leave the money near a statue in an Aberdeen park, which was never named in all of the court documentation I read. And it was called...
Melgard Park.
There we go. Melgard Park.
And the statue was of Andrew Melgard, who famously walked from Watertown to Aberdeen and stopped and rest at that point. And hence the park.
You're shitting me, right?
Yeah.
God, that was beautiful. All right, so who is Andrew Melgard?
No, he did walk from I don't know, I can't remember what he was. I think he was a philanthropist or something, but he did walk from somewhere really far away.
How far away is Watertown? I'm not up on my
100
South
miles.
Dakota geography.
I don't know, as the bird flies or
Yeah, that's a pretty good walk.
for 18 whatever. But yeah, there's this statue in the middle of the park.
Mhm.
He's up on this giant boulder.
Okay.
Where the hell they got a boulder? I mean, we're not talking. The glaciers didn't push those boulders around in Aberdeen.
No, not there.
So yeah, I don't know where they got the boulder, but yeah, they got the statue probably from a statuary.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in college, I filled a pie tin up with shaving cream and I put it on his face.
Yeah, I could see
I hope
that.
the statute of limitations is over on public.
On buying a statue.
What you should call it. Mischief.
Yeah, it's just fine. It's probably fine.
Well, it turned his face green, I heard, because it was copper.
He would have turned green eventually anyway.
Yeah, the premature greening made it.
You didn't go check?
What have I told you, or what have you learned about doing a true crime podcast?
Oh yeah, don't go have a look.
Ever go back to the scene of the crime.
Alrighty, statue Aberdeen at 9 p.m. The caller also told her that her son was okay, but wouldn't let her speak to him until he got the money.
Which means he's dead. Always means he's dead.
Always means he's dead. The money was delivered as directed, and it was picked up by a young man in a blue Oldsmobile who drove off unaware that federal, state, and local law enforcement had eyes on him the whole time.
Which was also a big deal. The FBI was in Aberdeen.
Right, which I was interested to see that because this is before, I don't want to give any spoilers, but Minnesota gets involved. So before like state lines were crossed, is kidnapping automatically a federal?
I guess.
Yeah, we don't know anything about our legal system.
I just learned that just because something's a felony doesn't mean that it's a federal crime. So I really know.
Oh, yeah, no, two different things.
nothing about.
I don't know. There's something in the back of my mind that tells me that kidnapping is always
It's a
federal.
big deal.
It's a super big deal. And I suppose there's always really high probability that it does become interstate.
Murder or.
Well, just crossing state lines, because that's usually when the feds get involved.
Yep.
So all of the law enforcements had eyes on him the whole time. They had also put a radio tracking device in the bottom of the briefcase that was holding the money, which is pretty slick considering it was 1986. And following that signal, the agents were able to follow the person who picked up the money, Todd Michael Miller. Before he left in Aberdeen and started heading towards Minnesota, he stopped to change clothes, switch into an orange Camaro, and picked up his 17-year-old sister, Paula. The two then hauled ass into Minnesota and were at a roadblock in Starbuck, Minnesota, where Miller was arrested. Now, of note, just 2 years before, on July 1st of 1983, the world's largest lefse was born in Starbuck, Minnesota.
You may want to tell non-Minnesotans
What lefse is?
lefse is.
It's like a pancake, but made out of potatoes. And not that good unless you put stuff on it.
Yeah, you got to put ketchup. I mean,
Not ketchup. Gross.
really?
No.
I always just ate it like a. What are those things?
Tortilla.
The potatoes that they put into the pan and they fry them up, and they're called hash browns.
So you warm it up a little bit. We always had it, because my dad's Scandinavian, we always had it with butter and like sugar and cinnamon.
Oh.
And that was really good.
And my aunt would make something I thought was lefse at first, but I think it was called Fataman.
Not Scandinavian.
Yeah, but it was like you said, if you took a pancake and dried it out and then rolled it up into a cylinder.
Yeah.
It was
Oh, I don't know what that's called, but I know what you're talking about. But it's like harder.
yeah, she
Yeah.
called it Fataman. Sorry.
Yeah, no, lefse is more like tortilla consistency. It's actually very much like a tortilla, except it's made out of potatoes.
Now I know what you're talking about. And everything I said about the hash browns
Yeah, that's wrong.
was incorrect.
Yeah.
But yeah, butter and cinnamon.
Butter and cinnamon sugar. Yep.
Sorry.
So I was once in Starbuck, Minnesota. I was there because the local town that I was going to had no hotel rooms. So I ended up in Starbuck for a hotel room because I did not call ahead because there was always a room when I got there. So I ended up in Starbuck, and it was when Jeff and I were first dating. And there was no cell service because this was 2005. So I had to stand in the middle of the road in Starbuck, Minnesota to call my boyfriend.
Wait, what? You and Jeff were dating, so then you called your boyfriend?
No, he was my boyfriend. And it wasn't a problem to stand in the middle of the road because there was no traffic the entire time we were on the phone.
Why would there be?
I don't know. I mean, it was like 5 o'clock. But they had these banners, like those light post banners that said home of the world's largest lefse. So I'm telling Jeff, like, check this shit out. I'm in the home of the world's largest lefse. But I did not know until I was researching this story this week that the world's largest lefse was born in 1983. I was there in 2005. Those banners were not old.
They're still celebrating.
They are still celebrating it. So what I'm saying is the lefse and this roadblock are the two biggest things that have ever happened in Starbuck, Minnesota.
So what is it about eastern Minnesota and small towns and having the largest blank?
Like the world's largest ball of twine made by one man?
Yeah, in Darwin.
In Darwin. Which, did we see that together?
Possibly.
Yeah, because I have no idea. I don't remember if you were there or not.
I mean, well, if we went to Aberdeen, then you went through Darwin. So
Then I bet we did. Yeah.
big
I don't know.
saggy
Probably
ball of twine.
trying to... Made by one man. They're probably trying to get tourism. I mean, anything. We fucking drove down to Darwin to look at the world's biggest ball of twine. It worked.
No. We were passing through Darwin.
No, I've definitely went once with my old roommates, Christy and Mike. We definitely drove down
there
specifically
to
for
see the
it.
ball of twine.
Yeah. I mean, when you make fun of it for so long, you got to go look at what you're making fun of.
Sorry, Darwin.
Sorry,
I'm sure
Darwin.
it's
You're a lovely little town.
It's a beautiful, beautiful ball of twine.
It's in a really nice little
Thing.
gazebo. Yeah, it's actually very nice.
It looks really old.
I think it is pretty old.
Yeah.
I don't know how well twine holds up. Anywho, the briefcase containing most of the ransom money was found in the orange Camaro, and $862 was in Miller's wallet, $760 of which was identified as the ransom money because they kept track of the serial numbers like you do when you put together ransom money.
Booyah. He didn't specify unmarked bills. Non-consecutive.
Yeah. Well, and it could have been both of those. They could have just written them all down. When he was questioned, Miller said that he had $500 in his wallet that he had taken out from the ATM, which again, I'm going to call bullshit on because it is 2019 and I can only take out $300 at a time from the ATM.
But back in the pasties, maybe they learned to only
they
allow
have to
so
limit.
much. Yeah. Because ATMs were rather new at the time, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, that would have been...
I mean, they didn't even call them ATMs at the time.
No.
They called them magic money machines.
That was actually a brand. We had them in Ohio.
Oh.
I think it was Ohio that we had the magic money machines. Yeah, it's a brand. He said he had this $500 that he took out of the ATM, and the cops were like, hey, Scooter, you have $862 in your wallet, not $500. Then he said that he'd been given some traveling money
Well, yeah.
by a Mr. Bob Jacobs, who was going to buy a horse from Miller in Alexandria, Minnesota.
So isn't I'm going to go buy a horse a euphemism for something else?
I gotta go see a man about a horse?
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously the police were just completely in the wrong because he was going to see a man about a horse.
Exactly. And that's never, ever weird. During this conversation, one of the agents asked Miller where Mike was, to which Miller replied, I wouldn't hurt Mike McNeil. He's my best friend. At no time had anybody said Mike who.
Yeah. Who's Mike McNeil?
McNeil was his mom's name? So I don't know if that was like a stepdad's name or if he went by it. It's the only time it was ever mentioned. It wasn't really explained why he called him Mike McNeil.
Yeah.
But also growing up in the 80s with a mom that had a different last name than I had, I got called weird shit all the time. because nobody understood that when she got married, I didn't get that name too.
I suppose, yeah.
I kept the old one for another few years, and then I took the new one too. But it's not usually how it happens.
Yeah, Di changes her name more than enough, and then I change my underwear.
Oh my God, it's like once a decade.
Whether they needed it or not.
Yep. Miller was turned over to the Aberdeen PD. You guys had a police department. That's so cute.
Of course. Fire department, police.
Aw.
Indoor toilets. Out indoor toilets.
Out indoors?
You got to go out to the indoor toilet. No.
But when you got to the outhouse, it was a flusher.
Exactly. But it had the tank above, and you just had to pull the chain.
That'd be cool. I wonder if I could still get like a modern version of that for my old house. Yeah. That'd be kind of fun.
Was that the one that was invented by Mr. Crapper?
That didn't turn out to be true.
Really? Robert Crapper didn't invent the toilet?
I think he was somehow involved, but I don't think he invented it. Oh. Anywho.
I'm so sad.
Aberdeen PD. When he was there, he told the officers that Bob Jacobs, who was a casual acquaintance, in his words, had asked him to pick up a package behind the statue in the park.
Brilliant.
And bring it to Jacobs in Alexandria, Minnesota. Jacobs said that if Miller did this for him, he, Jacobs, would buy a horse from him for $45,000. And from this, Miller, quote, suspected that Jacobs was involved in drugs. The officers smelled bullshit right away, and they encouraged Miller to come clean because there was a missing guy that they were trying to find, and they knew that the story was made up.
Right.
So then he told him that Jacobs had instructed him by phone to call Mrs. McNeil and deliver the envelope to a bar. Jacobs told Miller that if he refused, he'd never see his friend again. He said that he received a second call from Jacobs, who threatened Miller's new baby and instructed him to pick up the money and deliver it to a hotel in Alexandria. So the FBI took Miller to that hotel in Alexandria, but Bob Jones never materialized. Miller was then taken back to Aberdeen and put in jail.
We have a jail too.
Like one cell or like more?
Bars and everything.
Oh, man.
Don't ask me how I know.
Because you've been in it.
No. So don't ask.
But I'm pretty sure that's it.
No, never been in. Close.
I thought you had been.
No, just always a bridesmaid, but never a bride.
Oh, that's too bad. There's still time. On May 16th, Miller delivered the fourth version of what happened, and this is right from the court records, because I could not summarize it better. On May 7th, the evening after his son is born, hey, let's look at the things here. May 7th.
He disappeared on 8th.
Yeah, this guy had a 2-day-old baby. Anyway, May 7th, the evening after his son was born, he was celebrating the birth in an Aberdeen bar with some friends, like you do.
Do you?
Well, when you're not the one still in the hospital.
Obviously.
I would have liked to have celebrated at a local
wrong.
bar.
I did it completely wrong.
Well,
I was like helping out and whatnot.
But you had a NICU baby.
That's true. But I didn't have to do anything. I mean...
No, but you probably wanted to be there.
Particularly. I was frightened.
Yeah. Yeah. Around 11 p.m., he left the bar. He was approached by two individuals, a white man and an Indian, who pulled him into an alley and asked him for a favor, at which point the white man punched him in the stomach. The white man made a veiled threat against Miller and his baby, and then the two strangers let him go. Miller went home. A man, whose voice Miller identified as that of the unknown white man, called Miller on May 9th and instructed him to take a note from his mailbox and deliver it to Mrs. McNeil, or Kinney and Miller's baby would be killed. So there needed to be some better grammar there, because Kinney and Miller did not have the baby together. Kinney and Miller's baby would be killed. The caller told Miller that Kinney was wearing blue jeans and Nikes. Miller did as he was told, in the process making the May 10th call to Mrs. McNeil. On May 12th, Miller received another call from the unidentified white man. He was given instructions regarding the ransom money, which he relayed to Mrs. McNeil. Miller was promised some money if he followed orders.
What happened to the horse?
No horse.
I'm listening to this whole thing and all things. Whatever
But what
happened
about
to
the horse? No horse. As a cover story to explain his trip to Minnesota, Miller told Moore, he made up the horse tale.
Oh. Just the tail.
Just
not
the tail.
whole horse.
Not the whole one, just the tail. After gathering up the ransom money, he went to an Aberdeen bar and tried to recruit a friend, Toby Whitlinger?
Yeah.
Do you know him?
No.
To join him on his trip. Toby declined, so he called his sister Paula, who went along.
Good girl.
2 days later, the fifth version of the story came out, again from the court documents. Kinney had initiated the whole thing and enlisted Miller in an extortion scheme. This scheme required Miller to call Mrs. McNeil and pick up the ransom. Miller suggested the Alexandria Motel Rendezvous. Kinney indicated that he was in some kind of trouble, which Miller assumed was drug-related. He's doing a lot of assuming about the drugs.
Yeah. There were a lot of stories, but go ahead.
On May 7th, Miller told Kinney he was backing out. The next day, according to Miller, he received a call from an unknown man with a deep voice.
Was it you?
Probably. This person informed him that he had to follow through with the plan or his baby would be killed. Miller admitted that he had written the ransom note and made the calls to Mrs. McNeil. On May 12th, the man called again and said, "Do as you're told, nobody else is involved, and nobody gets hurt." Despite this warning, after picking up the money, Miller took his younger sister with him, apparently for protection, as he said, "There's safety in numbers."
Indeed.
Because a 17-year-old girl is super good protection.
I was afraid of him. Back then.
Well, yeah.
Probably now, too.
Probably, yeah. So you said that there were rumors. They didn't get a lot into the whole drug thing. Like, were they both involved in drugs? Was anybody involved?
Kind of that. It was... I don't know any facts because none of them came out. Like,
right.
What you're reading is...
It's it.
A lot, yeah, there's a lot more than what I knew, but apparently those two were involved in the marijuana.
The devil's lettuce.
Yes. And so there were some who said that Kinney got what he deserved because he was messing with
the devil's lettuce.
I don't know. I don't think anybody deserves to be found maggot ridden, but no matter what kind of kale.
Kale was involved.
Anything, that sort of thing. You're making a salad. It's okay. Just let it go.
I don't know. I'm not really on board with kale. So because of this interview with the allegations of like the drugs and all of those sorts of things, an arrest warrant was issued for Kinney. And so that wasn't explained because, again, we're dealing with court records. And I found that interesting, and I wondered if that allowed them to amp up the search a little bit, if he wasn't just missing, but also maybe like a criminal, if that added some more resources.
Right, because it seemed like a really long time before they found him.
Yeah, it was like 3 weeks. Yeah.
Which in
the 80s was forever.
80s, yeah, it was just like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They also found an eyewitness who claimed to have seen Kinney in the Alexandria Motel talked about on the night of May 13th, which was 5 days after he went missing. And they received a phone tip from a woman who said that the missing man could be found at an abandoned farm southeast of Aberdeen. So police took a search of a 5 to 6 mile radius, but it didn't turn up anything. On May 28th, more than 3 weeks after Michael Kinney was last seen, his badly decomposed and
maggot-ridden
body was found in an abandoned ice house several miles west of Aberdeen. Everything I read, which again was only court documentation, very specifically pointed out the maggot-ridden.
Well, yeah.
Now, interestingly, one of the documents that I read this morning said that one of the bases for... I'm going to get ahead of myself here. One of the bases for appeal was the testimony of the entomologist, the bug guy.
Bug doctor, yeah.
Yeah, the bug doctor. Apparently he went up and he's like, no. He couldn't have been killed here because the type of maggots that were found in him are a type of blowfly that's only found in South America. But it turned out the research he was using hadn't been updated since 1949. So they threw that right the hell out.
Yeah. Well, Aberdeen.
Right, but everything talked about the maggot-ridden. He was found in an ice house. He'd been shot 3 times and had head injuries that seemed to have been inflicted with a square-edged instrument. What would be a square-edged, like not a hammer?
Square-edged instrument.
I'm thinking like...
Maybe like a Telecaster?
What's a Telecaster? Like
guitar?
No, that's not... Oh, those. I was thinking like, because it was never mentioned what the murder weapon actually what the square-edged instrument was.
Well, they said that he was missing a tire iron out of the back of the Oldsmobile. Which also had the bullets, right?
The Oldsmobile did, yeah. Yep.
If you're going to use a car in a murder, Oldsmobile's the one to go for.
Do they still make Oldsmobiles?
No.
Oh.
They don't.
My grandparents had Oldsmobiles.
My mom did too. Yeah. There's a special feel in an Oldsmobile.
You're on fire tonight. The doctor who performed the autopsy concluded that either one of those could have gotten the job done of killing him, but he thought that the gunshot wound to the aorta was the one that had done the trick.
Booyah.
I feel like that seems valid.
Always go for the aorta.
Oh, man. He also said that the stomach contents were consistent with Kinney's last known meal and estimated that he'd been dead for 2 to 3 weeks, but he said that was a real rough estimate.
Did he say what the meal was?
It was pizza.
From Pizza Hut.
Was it from Pizza Hut?
I
don't know. It didn't say where it was from, but it was like a pepperoni sausage and olive.
Okay, so in Aberdeen at that time, there were 3 pizza places. Pizza Hut, Lou's Pizza, and Godfather's. So it had to be one of those 3.
It appeared that Kinney had not been killed at the ice house, but he was probably left there after his death. Actually, I do want to clarify the ice house thing. Is this an ice house like a fishing ice house, or was this an ice house like a storage ice house? Do you know?
I remember the picture of it on the paper, and it was like one of those dilapidated kind of leaning. So I'm guessing an ice house.
Like a fish house?
Not on the lake.
Okay, it's like a storage ice house?
Right.
All right.
Yeah, it seemed to be too big for a fishing ice house. But
okay.
You're talking about 30 years ago?
Well, yeah, but if it was also dilapidated, like you can't haul that onto the lake.
Right. Well,
you should not haul that onto the lake.
It hadn't always been dilapidated.
That's true, but it was by that. It like everything talked about, like it was really
I
not
just
in good
thought
shape.
it was just somebody's not outhouse, but an outbuilding.
Some outbuilding, yeah.
Right. And what's really weird, and I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but I when I remember this story, I remember that Kinney, it always seemed like he was a kid.
Yeah, he was.
But he was a college student.
Yeah, but he was like 18 or 20 or something.
Yeah, but I was thinking he was like 12, like a Jacob Wetterling type thing.
No. He was. That's the bad thing about only going on court records. They don't have things like birth dates and shit of the victims.
Right.
Like the narrative is very poor.
Sorry.
But no, he was.
It's a horrible story. It's all my fault.
It's not a horrible story. It's just they don't give me all the details I want. So he wasn't killed in the ice house, probably left there after he was dead. During the trial, several interesting things were presented. There was testimony that Miller's father was in financial difficulty, and there was a land payment that was due like the day that Kinney disappeared or the day after, like right around there. Martin Miller, the father, had written checks totaling $23,420.10, which were returned for insufficient funds. Todd Miller knew his dad was in financial trouble and had discussed selling a horse to raise the money that was needed for the land payment. Miller indicated that Kinney regularly used marijuana and maybe other drugs and wanted to leave Aberdeen and go to Canada. He speculated that he could do this by forging bank documents. However, the girlfriend, Kinney's girlfriend, indicated that Kinney didn't have any money problems, and other witnesses testified that Kinney already had access to his mom's bank accounts, so there was no need to perform fraud in order to get money out of her. He had access to everything.
Right. I guess unless he's just, embarrassed to say, "Hey, Mom, I need some money to go buy a horse," or
right, but
go buy some horse.
Well, he wanted to go to Canada. The horse was the other guy.
But horse is also heroin.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that horse. But if he was going to, if he was saying that he could do it by forging bank documents, he didn't need to do that. He could have gone into the bank and been like, "Give me the money."
Yeah.
and just pieced out and never like asked his mom or anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're not dealing with the sharpest staples in the staple gun.
No. I'm also never giving Liam access to my bank accounts. That seems like a super bad idea. Physical evidence included hair, fiber, and blood taken from the Oldsmobile, matched samples taken from Kinney's body, and a live round matching those found in Kinney's body was recovered from the Camaro. They couldn't do an exact match because the bullets they found in Kinney, they just said deformed, but they didn't say how. So I don't know if it was from the impact or were they shitty bullets. Like it didn't say how, but they weren't, it was the same kind, it was the same caliber, but they couldn't say it was exactly the same because there was something wrong with the bullets in the body that made that impossible.
Yeah, I don't want to sound stupid. I was going to say maybe they weren't like, jacketed, so they tumbled and broke up.
Maybe you know more about bullets than I do.
But yeah, what I could have said was just completely wrong too. Certain bullets are made to tumble and break up and cause more damage. That's why they use the M16.
Well, don't they like fragment or like kind of explode?
Yeah, these ones are meant when they hit. They're very small caliber at a very high velocity. So when it hits, it breaks up and tumbles through the body and leaves parts all around.
So this is a 22 caliber. Where is that in like caliber world?
Pretty small.
Okay.
Like smaller than the tip of your finger or your pinky finger.
Doesn't seem like it should. Like, velocity.
Maybe like an omeprazole capsule. It'd be a bit smaller than that.
Hey, Heartburn, how are you?
But there's hollow points that, like, when you hit, like, they mushroom out and get bigger. There's, steel jacketed. They make ones that are hypersonic, I think they're called.
Oh, my.
They're very pointed, so they travel faster and cut into whatever they're going into.
Oh, wow. It's a whole new world.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, killing's science in and of itself.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And there's always something to kill.
I hear. Handwriting analysis demonstrated that Miller's handwriting matched a forged check from Kinney's account written after his disappearance. The clerk at the convenience store where the check was passed identified Miller. Kinney's checkbook, which he was carrying at the time of his disappearance, which I was reading that and I was like, why on earth would you carry your checkbook? Oh, because it was 1986 and we all did that.
Yeah, because that was
that's what
form of currency back then.
Right. Todd Michael Miller was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, possession of ransom money, and forgery. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on the murder and kidnapping charges, 15 years for possession of ransom money, and 5 years on the forgery count, all to be run concurrently. He appealed. He lost. There was some really great commentary in the appeals from the judge. I liked him a lot. And he is still in prison, as far as I could tell.
Yep, he is also a resident of Sioux Falls, just like me.
Aww. Do you like to go visit him?
No, I thought about it. It's like kind of a weird, like when you're a kid celebrity, like Blinky the Clown.
Right. I feel like this is your Jacob Wetterling that we talked about. The kid that was kidnapped, who's like a year younger than me. I mean, this guy was older, but like that has always affected, like I know it affected how my parents treated us. I know it's impacted how I think about safety with my son. Like, was this kind of the same thing? Did you see anything from your mom that was different?
I think at first there was. Like I said, it played out over what seemed like months, but apparently wasn't. But yeah, I mean, we couldn't go out and stuff until they had the person. But I think Jacob Wetterling, that whole case, I mean, that affected me too. I mean, we were in high school when that happened.
Yeah.
And that was so close. And it was a kid. It wasn't just...
Well, and they didn't find him.
Right.
They didn't find him. They didn't find the guy. Like, nobody knew anything.
It was just gone. And
whereas this was at least resolved. We know he killed him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was always question about it. Like I said, small town people talk.
Yeah.
They were both involved in the underworld of, Aberdeen.
Aberdeen.
Yeah. Criminal underworld. And all those railroad tracks have to have to lead somewhere.
Yeah. But I have to believe that the criminal underworld in Aberdeen is not that horrible. Like,
I don't know.
it's not the mob.
It could be. I mean, if I were the mob, I'm going to wax philosophical here. Why, there's just as much money to be made in a lot of small places as there is in a small amount of large places.
Yeah, that's why they own all the garbage companies.
And Little Caesars.
Do they own Little Caesars now?
That's what I heard.
Oh, they used to own Snapple.
Did they?
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Went downhill since they got rid of it.
I never liked it.
I don't know. I mean, the mob is bad or whatever, but...
That's a great tagline. The mob is bad or whatever.
But everybody loves a good freaking gangster movie, right?
Hell yeah.
Goodfellas is like one of the most popular movies, The Godfather.
Oh, yeah. I love a good mob story.
They're bad, but boy, do we love them. Where were we?
We were at the end. Like, what else do you know? What do you...
About that story?
Yeah.
Just that he's still there. It was the first, you knew about murder from watching Starsky and Hutch and stuff like that, but it actually happened in our town. The park was only 2 or 3 blocks away from my house. I had tennis lessons there. I rode the tornado slide when I was little there. That was the park. Like every summer they had arts in the park where you'd go and see stuff. And so, yeah, I was kind of like, holy crap.
Were you around when they did the drop with all the cops? Well, no. I mean, he didn't see them, so you wouldn't have seen them.
No. It just kind of came out in the paper later that all that happened, and you're like, what?
Yeah. How are you so close?
And that happened? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it had everything. It was the ransom note.
Yeah.
If you don't give us the money, you'll never see him alive again.
Yeah.
And then the drop and the car chase,
Yeah, it was textbook.
Yeah, just bizarre. And it was happening a few blocks away from my house. And, where I lived in Aberdeen was on Main Street, and Northern State College was, 2 blocks. It was Lincoln Street, Washington, Northern.
Wow.
And then, that park was, it borders Northern State. So... all that happened right around where I live. I feel like I've completely derailed this whole... Lost 50,000.
I don't know. I feel like that's usually my job.
Yeah. Should have warned him at the very beginning.
Probably.
If you don't die, this guy...
Yeah, you're not going to like him at all.
Yeah, we were convinced that we were the same person in college.
Oh, yeah. Very similar. All right. So, Dave, have you been listening to any good podcasts lately?
I am waiting with bated breath to a podcast that's going to be coming out in September. It's part of the series called We're Alive.
Okay.
It's written by Casey Whalen. He was in the Army in, I believe, Iraq and Afghanistan. And when he was there, he started writing a story that became We're Alive, the story of survival.
Okay.
And it's, Walking Dead, zombie kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, really good. It's more, they call it like theater of the mind.
Okay.
So they actually acted out and
Oh,
sounds
cool.
and stuff. And so the first one, Story of Survival, I went for, I want to say 3 seasons.
Okay.
And it's all one story. And then they came out with one that was only 6 episodes called Lockdown. So it happened at the same time, but was in a prison.
Oh.
And then this one coming up is called Gold Rush. And it's like a spur of the main story. They sent some soldiers off to do something, and that's about all I know about it.
Cool.
So I'm a Patreon there too, and I really enjoy it. It's like kind of like listening to a book on tape.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's that, and Tell 'em Steve Dave, which is part of Kevin Smith's podcast network.
Okay.
And you guys, that's about it.
Well, so I haven't listened to anything new because I'm still deeply embroiled on The Story Must Be Told, which I believe I said it last week. If you're up for a weird time, you should check it out. But when you said like a radio drama, one I used to love listening to, and they're not making it anymore. I'm pretty sure they're not. But all the back episodes, it's the Thrilling Adventure Hour. And it's like old timey radio drama, and there are several different threads. So there's like Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars, and a pair of married mediums that are mostly just drunks, and and a lot of really great names. That's where I was introduced to like Mark Gagliardi, who of course is one of the creators of Drunk History, and always ends up on the floor. He's my favorite. I'm
a Rich Fulcher fan.
Oh, I love Rich Fulcher.
And what did you learn? My ball.
He's the best. But Paget Brewster, Mark Evan Jackson from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Lots of really good stories and stuff in there. So if you're up for a radio drama that is also very clean, so you can listen to it around your children, unlike The Story Must Be Told.
I can't remember if We're Alive has swearing. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's Army guys, so
it's probably situational though. It's not like
not gratuitous
and graphic.
No. And it's funny because I mean, when you start listening to it, you think this one guy is going to be the main character, but then when it gets done, you kind of realize that it's this other guy that was kind of at first was kind of a side character, but really it's his story. Is it like how Star Wars is actually the story of Han Solo? No. Because that's not true. It's true. No. That's not true. That's impossible. Nope. Look at it. Nope. No character development. There's no growth going on. Luke Skywalker is a whiny waste of a human being. No, he's not. We will agree to disagree. So, Dave, do you have any advice for us? Sure. If you ever want a park named after you, just walk. And then wherever you rest, they'll make a park for you. Who would like that to be true? Like, how long do I have to walk? Well, at least 100 miles. 100 miles, yeah. Yeah. Without any modern accoutrement. So, like, no iPhone? No iPhone. Well, then I'm going to walk a lot more than 100 miles because I'm going to get so lost. You're going to have to actually have a mechanical compass. Yeah, that's not going to help. Yeah. All right. So, do you have any advice? No, that's your job this week. Oh, I'm sorry. That's really crappy advice. I mean, I don't think that I get it right all the time either. Yeah, always get everything in writing and never put anything in writing. Excellent. Call your people. And don't be like me, because I did end up on this week's podcast.